Matt, most people live inside their head in a prison and will never actually step foot into a prison. You got to experience both and kind of at the same time. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I served twice in prison. The first time was in 2004. I worked at a car dealership. They didn't pay me my commissions. I impulsively chose to try to sell one of their cars, got caught. Instead of going through the mental health court, Judge Jeffrey Crawford and Bob Wolford both decided it didn't meet the criteria, and I ended up going through the traditional court, came out with a record. As a result, I couldn't find a job as because of the background checks that become so prolific in this country. As a result, I used other people's information to find work to get a job. In 2016, the government pursued me for 6 years, finally got a grand jury indictment against me. That's when I did 18 more months in federal prison. Went to 10 different institutions. That's where I wrote my book, Bullied Behind Bars, A Gay Christian Trump Supporter Goes to Prison. I spent a lot of time in solitary confinement. The staff, the inmates, the guards didn't have my mind. They may have had my body, but I know a lot of people who are living in a prison in their mind because they are holding on to resentment, hatred, unforgiveness.
Yeah. So there's a statistic that 83% of people, once they get out of prison, get back into it. And obviously that's what happened to you. But you feel like not only while you were actually physically in prison, you started to realize, I saw you got diagnosed at a later age as an adult with autism. And then on top of that, while you're in solitary confinement, you were dealing with mental issues. And that's kind of where you found yourself and kind of started to see the light.
I had a near death experience in August 2015. I was almost killed by an out of control driver headed east on 495 in the middle lane going 72 miles an hour. I've been known to go 130. No guts, no glory. When a Lexus SUV was coming the opposite direction, came down an embankment, crossed in front of my car, but by the grace of God, I was saved. I was protected. And that to me was a line in the sand that God was drawing for me, saying, you're either going to do my will or you're going to do your own will and go to prison, come out, go back to prison. And I had had enough. I didn't want to go to prison anymore. I didn't want to live that life. And I had, for 35 years, been a lukewarm Christian. And it wasn't until I spent time in solitary confinement where I was reading my Bible daily, praying, fasting, exercising, creating those disciplines that have helped me become the Christian man I am today. And that's why I really try to get people to release that unforgiveness, because I had lived most of my life with anger, hatred, resentment, which had caused me so much trouble.
When you say you lived most of your life with anger, resentment, is that towards the justice system, towards your family, towards friends, or just all of that combined?
The whole world, everybody who had done me wrong, I was holding them captive
Like poor
because
me
I didn't love
mindset.
myself. Because I didn't love myself. I was holding on to that anger, that resentment, that hatred, and not let go of it. And I wasn't doing things that would allow me to release that.
Yeah, when I'm sure when you're in solitary confinement and you have nothing else to do other than think with your thoughts and process through those things, it's either, you either make it through and you kind of do what you do or you don't. And then you just keep, that same cycle going back in over and over and over. And having that mindset of poor me and, the world's done me wrong, which is like that negative mindset, or flip it like you did and start, seeing the positives in things. And then, how many people write books? Not many people. So you use now you're using your story to help and benefit other people.
Yes. I don't want to have anybody go through what I went through. That's why I wrote my book. I wanted to share my story. And while a lot of people may not be in a physical prison, they're in a mental prison in their head because they're holding on to past anger, resentment, hostility, frustration with things that have happened. And until we let go of that, it will hold us captive.
Do you think now in the United States and all over the world, mental illness and mental, anxiety, depression, do you think that has to do with just build up of kind of like what you're saying? Everyone feels like the world's done them wrong, etc.
Yes, and then people use drugs and alcohol as temporary coping mechanisms. What I learned from seeing many, many drug addicts coming in and out is they would always say, I just need one more fix. I just need to do it now and then I'll fix it tomorrow. That's how I was. Look, I just need to go 130 one more time. I just need to drive off without paying for gas one more time. And that's what the human mind will do. It will rationalize that bad behavior, and then that one turns into two, three, four, five, six, and then it's a vicious cycle. So what we need to do is nip it in the butt and cut it out right now.
Matt, how would you suggest to do that? So, for addiction to porn is a all-time high. There's a statistic on men not having sex, and I'm not one to promote men having sex, but it's because of this porn industry and the addiction to porn. And that's a small level, right? Like that's not really a crime to do that on your own. But anyone who deals with drugs, robbery, things that can get them into prison, obviously there's a higher level that's going to get them in trouble, go to jail, prison. What would you suggest for someone that needs that fix just one more time? Because I've been there before. Certain things, it's like, oh, I just want to do it one more time, then I'm going to stop. And then it's like, then you do it one more time. And then, like, obviously, if you're not doing something that's illegal, that's actually hurting your mind, hurting your things, but you don't see it as that because, like, it's not as big of a deal, say, on the uh, rules and laws of the United States of America. What would you suggest for someone to do?
I would suggest two things. One, find an accountability partner that's going to hold you responsible. This person is not your friend. They are going to be harsh if necessary and hold you accountable for what you said you're going to do. That's one. Two, you need to find things that will help you become a better person. In other words, do things that are not isolating. Cooking, swimming, dancing, gardening. All of these activities are not isolating, will help you to deal with the stress and anxiety that life brings. We all have stress. We each need to find a coping mechanism. That's why I am very against sports. There is nothing good that happens from sports. Men use sports as a defense mechanism. In other words, there's no vulnerability with sports. Nobody's going to get hurt. It's very safe. But I want men and women in my life that are willing to go to the deep end of the pool. And I have no interest in talking about things that absolutely mean nothing, like sports, because they're very isolating. Video games are another, porn, all of that is isolating. And that's what Satan wants all of us to do. He wants us to isolate. Look, in the Bible, when David and Eve sinned, they were all idle. Eve should have been with Adam. David should have been out fighting war. But instead he was back in the castle. What happens a lot of times when we sin, it's because we're idle, we're bored, we're looking for something to do. So the key for everyone is to keep busy and do things that involve other people. Don't isolate. Talk about what's going on. Find people, men and women in your life that will hold you accountable for your actions and won't sugarcoat things.
So I find it interesting how you say about sports. How do you feel about running? Because obviously that can be obviously it's a sport and I'm sure an endeavor of, a lot of runs and stuff are by yourself. So I recently have gotten into running, and I think sometimes when you do something like running, for me personally, when you have some long runs and things like that, when you come home, you're like wore out. But the mind has to go through so many mental battles while you're running to continue to run, and I see benefits in that. It is isolating because I mean, not every time you go out and run are you running with a friend, but sometimes you do. Like they have running groups now, and you can run with your friends. Um, but how do you feel about that?
I would encourage people who want to run to bring a friend or have somebody that they can talk to after the run, that they can debrief what happened.
I think that's
Look,
good though, how you said about not to be
when
lonely.
right when I mean that's when I was stealing, when I was lying, it's because I was lonely. I didn't have people I could talk to because I
Yeah.
wouldn't reach out. I came from, and my family is still very stoic. We're taught to stuff emotions, suck it up, buttercup, be a man, grow up. Men don't show emotions, and look where it ended up. And my two brothers still do the same thing. They stuff anger and hostility and resentment, and I saw both of them blow up on Thanksgiving Day as a result of not properly dealing with emotions.
Yes, I think, as you're growing up, how many people tell you as a man, basically you need to be this fictional character that is almost hard to withstand. But I don't think even like movies and stuff portray it well either because, as a man, you're supposed to be successful, you're supposed to be rich, you're supposed to be able to deal with all these things. And I'm sure like once you start dealing with certain things, you see how hard it is to deal with certain things. No one really or they leave out the like you said, like showing emotion, like having emotion, and it all builds up and turns into either like you said, blowing up at certain events, certain situations, or with their wife or their partner someday down the road because they don't know how to show emotion, they don't know how to talk about their day, they don't know how to relate with them. And it's something I personally actually deal with a little bit is because not that it's like, oh, like I need to be this, this say action figure kind of person, but just growing up, like, so I was adopted at a young age, and like I'm sure like how in from I think age 1 to 5 is like for mental and love and like all those things is like it starts to build it in your brain and like it's hard to fix that over time. So sometimes I think, well, maybe that's why like for certain things it's hard for me to open up as much as I'd like to, just because you have that fear of, is this person going to stay around, or like to me it's like to be vulnerable you have to have like some certain trust with that person because what comes with when you're vulnerable with someone, they can also use that to hurt you.
No risk, no reward. I encourage each person to lay out what they're looking for in the front end. That way they won't get hurt in the back end. And be clear. Set good boundaries.
So, which prison do you think was harder to escape? Physical or mental prison?
Mental health prison is much more difficult to escape because it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah, I've heard something before. It's something like fall in love with yourself because you have to live with yourself every day.
Love yourself, whether that means saying I love you in the mirror 10 times. If you don't love yourself, you cannot love another person. And until I started loving myself, accepting that I am not perfect, and making sure that my side of the street is clean. In any dialogue, there will be fault on both ends. So, what I look for in a friendship is a man or woman who can see the role that they play if there's conflict. Every relationship will come with conflict. It's how we deal with conflict. And that's what I loved about David in the Bible so often is every single time David sinned, he was always quick to repent. And that's what we as humans do. need to do. When we do wrong, we need to apologize to everybody that we've done wrong. That's, for me, that's what I look for in a friend. And folks that can see that their actions have consequences.
Yeah, think how much better the world would be if we were asking for forgiveness all the time. Because we live in a society where people never think they're wrong, or they hate to admit it. And sometimes it's one of those things. It's a humbling experience, especially if you're very passionate about something and you end up realizing, oh, I was wrong. To be a man, like have emotion, like show them, like, I am sorry, I did you wrong, whatever that situation could be. Because like you said, the Bible, like, if we just, there's so many issues in the world that if we would just go back to the Bible and following the Bible and doing what we're told to do, whether you're a Christian or not, it's forgiveness, asking for it is, I think, such a big thing that many people don't do nowadays.
Bible stands for basic instructions before leaving earth.
I like it. That's good. So you said you were a lukewarm, yeah, I can't speak, a lukewarm Christian going into prison, and then as you're in prison, obviously, I believe that's when you got a closer relationship with God and the Bible.
I had a near-death experience before I went to prison the
Okay.
second time, but I want your viewers to understand that I went to prison in 2016 for events that occurred in 2009. The government was on a mission to put me in prison and, in my opinion, to make an example out of me. But guess what? In a way, I've made an example out of what you can become if you choose to follow God. So they may have had my body, but they didn't have my mind. I wrote my story, and I wanted to share it with the world. Look, I was sexually assaulted behind bars. I was hit in the face several times, and my journal entries were confiscated. That's how scared the prison was.
So you said, like, the United States doesn't have a certain prison, or like for mental, like if you have mental problems, that, or they do. So like if you
Yeah.
do have, like, you said you're diagnosed with autism. You said there is or isn't a separate prison for people.
There is not. Look, I spent some time in different quote unquote mental health units. They were sex offender units. And so I got constantly labeled as a sex offender. And I am, oh my God, most definitely not. And I abhor those individuals.
Yeah. So it makes sense. So as a younger age, before you were diagnosed with autism, you were bullied for just how you were.
I was overweight. I was different. Autism wasn't really well understood. I still don't think it's really understood till today. And quite frankly, the judicial system is not equipped to handle anyone with mental health issues. It really is not.
I
And
don't even.
unfortunately, when a person breaks the law, they have no control over what happens after that. So, my message is, if you are engaging in low level crimes, or you know somebody who's engaging in low level crimes, nip it in the butt, stop it right now, seek help. And for me, I saw about 30 therapists in my life. I don't believe therapy is helpful for me. I joined some men's groups, and that's where I really started getting my healing. When I was on the carpet, being vulnerable with other men, sharing my story, and seeing how my story can relate to others.
Yeah, I think as people from the outside that look in at, say, Christians or Bible following people, they often think, oh, this person is so holy, or they must be so, or they think they are. And when you get in like men's groups, or you get in these groups where people are vulnerable, and you start to hear other stories about, people, what they've done, what they've been through, and you realize the reason they're at church or the reason they are following the Bible is because they've gone through stuff or they've, they're now like most of your people aren't perfect. I mean, no one's perfect, right? And but people put this target on people who, say they follow God or follow the Bible that, oh, they must think they're perfect. And it's like, no, it's like the reason I'm coming to these men's groups or these Bible studies is because I am dealing with the same stuff you're dealing, but I'm trying to deal with it and learn from other people and try to do it the right way.
Yes, and that is one criteria for me that I insist upon having in my relationships is men and women in my life that are working on themselves and don't say I'm perfect, there's nothing wrong with me, the whole world is against me.
So I want to dive back deeper into just the mental side of things. Why do you think people stay in situations that they hate?
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting different results. If I don't change myself, nothing else is going to change. I have to, whether that's change my place, my location, my job. I, we all want to be happy. We all want to feel loved.
So when it comes to, say, stepping out of your comfort zone for men and women, what do you think? Obviously, I like how you said do it with other people because just for like girls, for example, like going up high school, even like now in my 20s, it's like, oh, if they need to go to the bathroom, it's like the whole entire group goes to the bathroom. I don't really know why, but I do think that's a great example because, for example, say like a late night text to a girl or to a guy, depending on like whatever. So if you're hanging out with your friends, like say it's you and your buddies, you're not going to send that text. Or if you're hanging out with your girls, you're not going to send that text or whatever it is. I mean, sometimes if you're hanging out with your friends, it might be a bad influence. If they're bad influences, like maybe drugs and stuff like that. But like you said, if you surround yourself around someone who's like a Christian, someone who's accountable, someone who's like trying to make you better, and you're doing the same for them, and you spend most of your time with this person trying to become better, you're not going to have as much lonely time where you're going to, like you said, make bad decisions, whether it's crime or not.
It is really important to keep busy and engage in activities that will help you to engage with other people. Eliminate isolating events, watching TV, sports, video games. All of those are important. That's all because somebody is lonely. They're depressed.
Yeah, I
Try to
think
find
staying
a
busy.
tribe of men and women that can build you up.
Yeah, I think staying busy is a good one for even like you said, bad thoughts and stuff. It's like some days when I'm so busy, I don't even have enough time to check my phone and say doom scroll, or I don't have enough time to like. I have one of my friends used to have trouble sleeping and like falling asleep, and I'm like, you're one, you just aren't busy enough, or you don't haven't found something you're passionate about yet because, some of my days are so busy. There's so much going on. By the time it hits 9 o'clock, I am ready to hit bed. It's like it's time for bed, and but I also don't think I think as society, the things that they try to get you to enjoy and do are those isolating things like Netflix, scrolling on your phone, watching TikTok, or dating apps. And yeah, you might be trying to date, and there's also a statistic on this, and I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but the amount of men and women that swipe on these dating apps, but they never actually make it past that first like message they send out is very ironic because not only are they not getting that physical interaction with someone else, say like back when there wasn't phones, you physically had to go up and talk to someone, they're not even getting to a first date. So you might say, yeah, I'm trying to date, but you're really not.
I encourage people to go out in the world, not stay home. Find friends that will want to do things with you. And look, one of my heroes, Angela Lansbury, true inspiration for me, said most people find life to be very, very difficult. And this is a woman who's was highly successful. but she came from virtually nothing. And that's who I most relate to, is men and women that struggle, because I struggle daily. People that have had everything handed to them, I generally can't relate to.
Yeah, I think if I could give people a piece of advice, especially younger people, I'm not that old yet, but I'm getting older. And my advice, if you're coming out of high school, whatever it is life is going to be hard. So expect, it doesn't matter if you're rich, it doesn't matter if you're the most attractive person in the world, it doesn't matter if you're like these top tier things that you think, oh, this person probably doesn't have to deal with it. Life is going to be hard. It's life. And get ready for it, and adapt to the situations, make the most of it, try to be positive in every situation, because life does suck some days. But the greatest part about that is when you go to bed that night, you wake up, God gave you another day. It's a new day, and when you have those new days, it's to me, I love waking up in the morning, especially after like a hard day, the day before, because it's like this is a new day, you have new energy, you feel rested up, and like you're ready to go. Let's go. And uh, I don't know. To me, that's makes life more enjoyable, knowing that most of the things that you deal with aren't going to last your whole life. It might be a certain season you're in, but it will end.
God doesn't give me anything that I can't handle. God
Yeah,
is
it's
giving
funny.
me all the tools that I need to get through each and every day. It's how I use those tools.
Yeah, so I last night I was at the gym, and so we have a Bible study that we do every 2 weeks. And the people who own the gym, I was talking to them right before I left, and that was one of the questions for the Bible study this past week. Like, do you think God gives you anything that you can't handle? And we were just talking about it, and it's kind of funny because I was saying it's hard though sometimes when you're in those seasons where it's like, can I handle this? And obviously, once you look back on it and you realize, yeah, I can. But sometimes when you're in the midst of like, say, the hard part, some days it is like, can I get through this? Can I do it? But like you said, God's gonna get you through it. And if He doesn't, then I guess that was part of His plan to, I guess kind of like with Job in the Bible. That's the book we just did last week. Job got tested, lost his family, lost his possessions, and he got it all back eventually, but he had to go through a tough season.
We all, as Christians, will have to go through tough seasons. If you need help, get into the Word. Everything that life will throw against you has been talked about in the Bible. I am right now doing a deep dive into First Chronicles, and I am learning so much. I think a lot of churches do not spend enough time on the Old Testament, and the Old Testament is very important. The Old Testament is God's mind, and the New Testament is God's heart. And look at how many times God tested David.
Yeah.
God will test us. And we need to go to God for everything. And what I find is that a lot of people only go to God when they're in need of something. Just like a lot of people only call me when they need something. We need to have friends. We need to call on God for everything that's going on in our life. And look, there's 5 types of prayer, and the first type of prayer is thanksgiving. God, thank you for the sunshine. God, thank you for bringing me to the world today. Thank you for waking me up. Thank you for my family, even though my family is difficult, as all families are. But look, we all are only given one mother and father. And we need to honor that mother and father every single day. I see so many shows about kids and parents bringing their children or parents to court. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, but how many of those families are staying in the Word? I think
Not
when you
many,
get it,
not many families are. And, look, when I'm sinning, it's because I'm not in my word. It's because I'm not praying. It's because I'm not exercising. I'm not doing those disciplines that will help me to become a better person.
so with all of this, I think for me personally, like I like a routine. Uh, just kind of get me going on the day doing things. There's a from the correctional mental health research, it says lack of routine increases psychological distress and confinement. How important do you think a routine is to your everyday life?
I have a daily routine. I am up at 4:45 in the morning. Today I was up at 3 o'clock this morning. I am in prayer. I am reading my Bible. I am exercising. All of those disciplines need to be done in the morning. Why? Because what we as human beings will do if we do not do it in the morning, we will procrastinate. We will say, I'll get it to the afternoon. The afternoon turns into the evening, and then it turns into the next day. And that's how the drug addiction, or, whatever my addiction, the speeding, or, looking at porn, whatever my past addictions were, it was always that same mentality.
Yeah, and then find something you're passionate about and that keeps you busy. And yeah, I think so many people, that's I know I keep going back on it, but they're not busy enough and they don't have something they're passionate about because, I mean, to me, if you went to work for 8, 9 hours a day and you come home and then all you do is sit on your couch and watch Netflix and eat chips, that gets boring, that gets lonely, and then you're like, you need to find that thing that gives you excitement, and who knows what that could be, but it's probably not going to be something good. And yeah, I love a routine. I'm the same way. It's like wake up, and I think you always should start your day praying, reading the Bible, um, and use that to your benefit for the day. Try to learn, and then go face the world, because a lot of times, like you said, if you do get busy throughout the day and you try to wait till later to get it done, it normally doesn't happen. Other things come up, especially if you have kids. It's like, well, now my kids are off school, I don't have time to. And I've heard something, it's like about with meditating and just like being alone with God and those thoughts, and like let him talk to you. And how often do people actually get that time to be alone and with their thoughts with God, or with not, whether you're meditating for to hear God or just meditating to hear your thoughts. Not many people nowadays get that alone time.
It's all a choice. We all have the same 24 hours a day. It's how we choose to spend those 24 hours.
So, Franklin inspired framing has a quote. It says, "Suffering becomes fuel when responsibility enters the picture." And I wrote that one down. And I have one more. It says, "Blame feels like reliving, but weakness, or no, you don't rise." This is Alex Ramosi, and it's one of my favorite quotes. You don't rise to your goals, you fail to your you fall to your standards. And
Look, 3% of the population sets goals, and they're the most successful people. Goals need to be attainable, achievable, and concrete. In other words, I can't say I want to lose a lot of weight, because what does that mean? They need to be clear and concise, and we need to communicate them both in writing to another person that will hold us accountable for our actions.
accountability every single day. Like you said, find someone who isn't a friend that will keep you accountable, because I'm sure why you say not a friend is because as a friend, sometimes it's hard to be as say strict with someone else, because it's like, oh, they're my friend. And I actually had a friend recently that I would hold accountable, and we kind of became friends, just like kind of weird, but like just became friends, started working out together, and I'd hold him accountable, outside of the gym too, like with finances or with how he was spending his time. And it basically turned into where like we're not really friends now. And I think it's because I had a high standard for him and I try to hold him at that. And it turns into a lot of times where it feels like you're maybe the like getting annoying, because it's like, why are you doing that? Like, dude, like, you're not supposed to be doing that, or like whatever the situation is. And like you said, sometimes, well, not sometimes, it's probably better to have accountability partner always that isn't a friend.
I think it's really important to find an accountability partner that's not a friend, because My friends sometimes get upset or angry when they hear the truth because we all have itchy ears. We want to hear how wonderful we are and what a pleasure it is to be in our company. And a lot of people don't want to hear the truth. And lying, excuses, procrastination, it's just from the devil. It's not beneficial. Sugarcoating, I know a lot of people that sugarcoat things. Oh, I'm fine. What does fine mean? Until I started doing my men's work and identifying the six emotions: scared, angry, sad, happy, excited, T for tender, I substituted for L, loving. And those are the six emotions. And when we're in an emotion, we are either fully in it. I know a lot of people check it, well, I'm sort of happy. What does that mean? You're either happy or you're not happy. But a lot of men will say, oh, I'm all six emotions. No, you aren't. There is no way you can be excited and scared at the same moment. They are virtually on polar opposites of the scale.
Yeah, it's funny with happiness or people being happy. That people want to be happy all the time. And it's impossible because without knowing what it feels like to be in a low, you wouldn't know what it feels like to be happy. And it's almost like happiness. I was reading this in a book. Happiness, you get moments of being happy and they're short lived. But if they were not short lived, then you'd always be happy. But then like, it just wouldn't work. You can't just always constantly be happy. Like, that's just impossible.
Right. I need a short break.
Let's take on.
All right, that was all I needed.
You back and ready?
I'm ready.
So I think we'll try to pick back up right where we left off. I think I was talking about happiness. So
Yes.
just so I can edit it and it like goes in well. I'm gonna try to think something about happiness. So we're just talking about happiness and how you can't always be happy. There's all these other different emotions, and we talked earlier about having emotions, showing emotions as a man, and obviously sometimes that's hard for some people, and I guess I don't know exactly why. You might know better.
For me, a lot of it had to do with my upbringing and being in a family of Stoics. And that's why I made the decision that I was no longer going to wear masks. I know a lot of people wear masks in life and everything that they do, and it doesn't serve them. So, this is how I live my life. If is this serving me or hurting me? And I try to do things that serve me well. And not serving me well means stuffing my emotions. That doesn't serve anybody well. That's why I encourage people to show their emotions, experience highs and lows. We all will go through highs and lows in our life. It's how we deal with them and use them as opportunities. Every challenge that I have, I instead of using it as challenge, I substitute the word opportunity. God gives me opportunities. So it's all in the language we use. I could
Yes.
say today, it's miserable, it's snowing. Or I could say, the sun is shining and it's another glorious day with God. It's all how we frame things. And so I frame things in a positive rather than a negative. That's why it's so important for me and everybody else to remove negative, toxic people out of my life. I have enough negativity from my parents who are very codependent. I don't need any more people in my life that are negative.
Yeah, it's all in the perspective too, because like you said, you have to be time. We only get 24 hours, and you have to not only protect your mental freedom, but you have to protect the time and the spaces and the time you give people who are either benefiting you, filling up your cup or pouring out of your cup. And how do you deal with not relapsing mentally and physically back into, say, your old ways, your past ways?
By talking about things that are going on with me with other people, having men and women in my life that will hold me accountable, using I statements. I know a lot of people use you, we, they statements, and they do that to remove any personal responsibility. So, what I like to say is, when I do this, or when you do this, it makes me feel blank. That puts ownership on how I feel in a given situation. Because how I feel in a given situation is very different from the way anyone else will feel in that situation.
So you made it out. You figured it out. Basically, how to stay out of prison, how to get into those bad cycles. But many people repeat the same exact things over and over, and they get in the same cycle over and over. Like, oh, his dad went to jail, or his dad did that, and he grew up, and he's exactly the same way. I assume the reason why that happens is because they start to believe it themselves. Like, oh, my dad was this, that's what I'm going to be. And then, if that's how you're thinking, you're like, I don't know, whatever that thing could be, it's like you kind of put yourself into that situation. How do you, how would you suggest, or what would you say to someone who is either trying to stay out of the cycle that their parents went through or a brother and sister went through? What would you suggest to them to help them not get in that same cycle that their family or other people around them have been going through.
Remove yourself from other people that are engaging in crimes. Look, if you're broke and you surround yourself with other broke people, you're always going to be broke. If I surround myself with people that are committing crimes, I'm going to commit a crime. So I choose to surround myself with people that are engaging in positive behavior. Men and women that are reading their Bible, that are exercising, that are praying, that are doing what God intended them to do. I don't hang around with people that are watching sports, playing video games, committing crimes. Because I don't want to go back to that cycle. I don't want to get into that routine.
Yeah, it's all about who you surround yourself with. If you're, hang out with 9 millionaires, you'll become the 10th. If you hang out with 9 positive people, you'll become the 10th. And it's so true because so many times you don't realize, because some things that you pick up from people aren't catastrophic things. They could be little things like swearing or, just a negative attitude. If you're around people who are always just negative, then you start looking at life that way and it's like, wait, I used to never be like that. And yeah, I think you need to not, I wouldn't say every week, but when you need to, it's like you need to step back and look at your life, see who you're around, who you're spending time with, because it's so important. Not only the fact that you only get so much time, but it shapes you. It truly does. Like you said, I'm sure because obviously but yeah, I like that's so true.
My book is Bullied Behind Bars. A gay Christian Trump supporter goes to prison. It's available on Amazon. You can follow me on Instagram, Bullied Behind Bars, X, Bars Bullied, Facebook, Matthew.melvin.5621. Reach out to me, bulliedbehindbars@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know how I can help you. That's what God intended me to do, is to serve other people, to help other people, so that they don't make the same mistakes I did.
Matt, I appreciate you coming on. I think this is going to help a lot of people. Uh, you told them where they can get the book. We'll link it in the show notes as well. I'd like one last question I asked all my guests is if there's one book, podcast, thing that you would suggest or you that's helps you tremendously that you think could help other people, what would that be?
Stephen Covey's book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Beginning
There
with
it
the end
is.
in mind, sharpening the saw. Those are a couple of the disciplines that I like, but all seven disciplines will help you to become a better person.
Well, again, I appreciate you
That was
coming
one.
on.
Would be the Bible. The Bible to me is absolutely the most important book you should be reading.
That's actually what I thought you were going to say after talking to you. I was like, he's going to say the Bible. But the Bible is something that's I don't know how to describe it. It's I think it's still the most selling book in the world, but sometimes people already have a Bible. So another book would be seven. What was it? Seven effective. What was
Seven
it? Seven
habits of seven
effective.
habits of
Okay.
highly effective people.
Yeah, I don't think I have that book, but I think I'm gonna get it. But thank you again for coming on.
Thank you very much
Let's
for
go.
having me.
Let's go make a great day today.